What's up everyone, Colt Capperrune here. Thank you so much for stopping by for yet another video. I appreciate it very much. Today I want to go over what I believe is the single most important thing in mixing music. But for those of you who have not seen any of my videos before, welcome, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon next to the subscribe tab. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and drop me a comment if you have anything to add. I'd love to hear from you. I'm a producer and a mix engineer and a session guitarist here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've charted top 40 on Billboard. I've had a whole slew of #1s on iTunes and radio charts and Amazon and all over the place. I try very hard on this channel to never talk about things that I haven't been successful at myself. Hopefully you get something from this, and hopefully this helps your mixes. Now there are a million videos here on YouTube telling you if you want to EQ a kick drum to cut 250 and boost 80 and boost 6K, or if you're trying to get that nice thick thuddy snare that you should boost 100 to 200 hertz and that you should use a high shelf at 5K. There's plenty of tutorials on de-essing a vocal, and one of my favorite things about de-essing a vocal is parallel de-essing, or more importantly using a de-esser that has a parallel mix knob, so that way I can hit the vocal pretty hard with the de-esser and pull the parallel back so I still retain all the naturalness and all the good stuff in the vocal while just taming those S's. And I could talk about this stuff literally all day, but one of the things I try to do on this channel that I think is even more valuable than telling you guys what to do is trying to get you in the right headspace. If I can get you guys to think in a way that will automatically let you make the best choices regardless of what genre you're working on and regardless of what the song sounds like or what the instrumentation sounds like, that I think will get you way further ahead than just telling you how to de-ess a vocal or telling you how to EQ a snare drum. Now the interesting thing about sound is it's very similar to sight in the fact that there's a light on me shining right here. It's really bright, but it only looks this bright because this is very dark and this is very dark. If this was very brightly lit up, then that means that this would not look so bright. In the same way that I'm very clearly in focus, that background's out of focus. But the fact that that background is out of focus makes me look even more in focus. Now, mixing audio is exactly the same thing. And I like to describe this as kind of a yin-yang relationship that every element within the mix has to every other element within the mix. So this principle is one that I use regardless of the genre I'm mixing or regardless of what the program material sounds like. Doesn't matter how good it was recorded or not. In order for something to be loud, something else must be quiet. In order for something to be bright, something else must be dark. In order for something to be thick sounding, something else has to be thin sounding. This yin-yang relationship between all the elements is incredibly important. If you're listening to a song and literally every element in the song is turned all the way up, all the way through the song, and there's no breaks, there's no down sections, it's just turned up to 11 the whole time, the perception of it hitting hard, the perception of it being loud is much, much less than if there were quieter elements in the mix. And then when the loud parts hit, they just hit that much harder. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm mixing is if there's kind of a soft intro or a fade in or some little instrumental section before the beat actually kicks in, before the drums or the band actually kicks in, is I like to make that quieter than you might think. And what this does is then when people listen to it and they're like, the intro's coming in and it's kind of quiet, they turn their radio up. And then what happens is when that beat comes in or the band comes in, it just slams. It has so much more impact than it would had that intro or that soft section been just as loud. And so this balancing act between something being quiet and something being loud is super important. And this loud thing doesn't seem nearly as loud if something before it or after it is also equally as loud. Now it's the same thing with EQ. If everything's sizzly and everything's bright and crisp, then if everything in the mix is that way, then nothing actually seems that bright and crisp. As opposed to if you have something kind of in the background that's real dark and thick sounding and then something else is crisp, this thing sounds really thick and this thing sounds really crisp. This difference in perspective is super important. It's the same thing with depth of field when I was talking about how I'm in focus and that background is not. And it makes that background look even more out of focus while I look even more in focus. It's the same thing in the front to back of a mix. Now, without getting too off into the weeds in this, I typically use EQ and reverb to push things back in the mix, and I usually use EQ and compression to pull things forward in the mix. But the important mindset here is you want to choose elements. You want to be be in the back of the mix, and you want to choose the elements you want to be in the front of the mix. And the further you push something back in the mix, the closer the closest thing seems. I get asked all the time how I get my vocals so close and so present within a mix. And there are some technical things happening here, no doubt, but one of the big reasons is because there is something behind the mix that seems very far away, and so it gives the illusion that that vocal is so much closer than it actually is. Now, this yin-yang is also important in terms of giving priority to elements within a song. There's only so much room in a stereo mix, so you can't have huge drums and huge guitar and huge bass and huge keys and huge vocals and huge programming. Everything can't be huge, because if you try to make everything huge, then the whole thing just ends up sounding not that huge. And this is one of the issues you run into when you're working with some bands, where the drummer wants his drums to hit harder, but the bass player wants his bass turned up. The guitar player can't hear himself well enough, and those guitars just aren't crushing like they should be, but the vocalist also thinks he should be louder. And so you just turn everything up and you're right back where you started. You have to choose priority within a song and within a mix, and you can use automation to push and pull things in and out of priority, but choosing the priority is really important, and understanding this yin-yang situation where in order for something to be loud, something has to be quiet. In order for something to be bright, something has to be dark. In order for something to be close, something else has to be far away. It is a principle that crosses all genres and all program materials, and it doesn't matter what level you are at, this should increase your production value. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon next to the subscribe tab. Check out my Instagram, Colt Capperrune, and hit up my website, coltcapperrune.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.